Hey guys, in this video we'll talk about top 5 Space Marine units that are capable of destroying an Imperial Knight in one go. If you recently struggled with Knights or worry about encountering them in general, this video is definitely for you. Just a quick disclaimer, we are not going to be talking about like taking 3 Gladiator Lancers and 3 Vindicators and shoving them down a Knight's throat. Obviously, if you take multiples of anti-tank weapons, at some point you'll be able to kill a Knight. This particular video is about units that are capable of killing a Knight just as a single unit. Leader obviously is a part of a unit, so this does count, but only as one entity, one unit. First in this glorious list are going to be Centurion Devastators with grav weapons. Usually when we're talking Centurion Devastators, we are thinking las cannons, because they are the more universally applicable weapon for them. But for the specific purpose of killing a Knight, you actually are much better off with the grav. The practicality of 6 Centurions is very limited because of their low mobility. They only move 4 inches, and you cannot really fit them in transports as a 6-man squad, of course. So you are essentially limited to only the detachments that have assault, so they can advance and shoot. And even then, it's going to be a challenge to operate them. Not impossible, but definitely something that will be not easy. So this is not something that I would recommend to start with on your journey of how to actually kill a Knight. However, for an experienced player, they are not something that you cannot solve. You can use them if you have assault and fall back and shoot, of course. So the list of detachments is limited, but it's not just Gladius. Wish we could use them like before in Vanguard, then they would be just amazing and probably would not be at number 5 in the top 5. However, the old Vanguard is no longer with us. We cannot teleport the Centurions around anymore, so yeah, that's why we're talking about them like this. In any case, they are going to be doing, with just rerolls to hit, an average of 25 wounds to a Knight, with grav and the grenade launchers together. This can essentially be counted as without external buffs. For all other ones, as you will see later, we'll be using a ton of different buffs. With these guys, they're just plain as is, essentially. So that's why I'm going to count 25 wounds as a pass, even though we actually technically need 26. But I think this is enough, because we are only counting the rerolls to hit for them, and you can get rerolls to hit from Oath, but they also have inbuilt rerolls to hit against units on objectives, which Knights are pretty often going to be on objectives. 80% confidence damage is 19 wounds. Of those who don't know, essentially it means in 80% of cases you will get this amount of damage or more. So that's a very good metric for us to see like how actually likely it is for you to achieve a certain result, because if you kill a tank on average, it's a good something that you can use to measure if you need more firepower or less. But if you kill the tank in 80% of chances, that means that you are almost always going to do that. So you can pretty much rely on it if you like to think about this way. So I like to now include that metric in my calculations, just so we can judge the volatility. So how big is the spread between the mean, which is 25, and this 80% metric? And in this case, it's 6 wounds, so it's definitely not present, but it is not huge as well. So the volatility is there, which is probably because of the low AP. So if you use something like Storm of Fire on the Centurions, which is a great stratagem for such a big unit, you will get a lot of mileage from it, because it will raise the AP of the grenade launchers, it will raise the AP of the grav itself, and therefore it's very likely that your average and your 80% confidence are going to be closer together, and the total is going to be higher. With Fire, for those who don't know, that's a Gladiator stratagem that ignores cover on one Adeptus Astartes unit. So one Adeptus Astartes unit can just ignore cover when it shoots, and also if you're in Assault Doctrine, you'll get extra AP. You probably will not really need that, because if you're ignoring cover, you're almost getting the maximum anyways. But like if the Knight was in cover, yeah, and doesn't have the 4+ invulnerable save turned on, which by the way we are counting this as a 5+ invulnerable save, not rotated iron shields, and it's not 6+ Feel No Pain. So technically for any Imperial Knight you would need plus about 18% or so more wounds to kill it. +1 to wound from Oath would definitely be helpful for the grenade launchers, not for the grab, obviously, because of anti-vehicle rule. But yeah, you can get more out of this 6-man squad of Centurion Devastators, which is great if you want to kill the knight with the 4+ invulnerable save and 6+ signal pain. You definitely need all the help you can get, but for a normal knight, as you can see, on average, it'll be enough just to shoot the grab with the launchers into it without any external help. That squad is 330 points now, so it is still cheaper than the knight that it kills. As always, I want to remind you about my Patreon 40K coaching service. If you're looking for help building your competitive rosters, preparing you for tournaments, or have any questions about your collection in general, check out the links for my Patreon in the description. Thank you. Next is a squad of Assault Terminators in Liberator Assault Group Detachment. So this is a very specific combo. A 10-man squad now costs 360 points, so 36 points per model. You would need the Liberator Assault Group for the extra 10 attacks and to bring the total up to Strength 10, AP 2 damage 2. Strength 10 unfortunately doesn't get us quite enough to where we want to be, because we actually needed Strength 11, but the extra 10 attacks are certainly very helpful. So that's 48 access, Strength 10, AP 2 damage 2 with devastating wounds on the charge. We'll definitely need the buffs here. Most optimal combination is Oath of Moment to compensate the guys hitting on 4s, and use Red Rampage to get Lance and Lethal. So we would Battle Shock our squad. You probably don't really care about that stuff because, well, you're going to kill a knight, so your guys being Berserk and not having OC is hopefully not going to matter. Certainly beats not being Battle Shocked, but also not killing the knight and getting 10 attacks to Strength 10, AP 2 damage 3 from the Gauntlet, punching your guys. On average, you would do about 28 wounds to a knight with this, so it will pass our test. What's cool about this one is that the 80% confidence damage for these guys is 24. So remember what we just discussed about the volatility and the spread between the mean and the 80%? Here it's much lower, so you are more likely to actually achieve your results and your floor is higher, and that's usually very good because you can rely on this damage more when you're planning your turn. Devastating wounds certainly help with that, I think, because they provide us with that floor of how many wounds you are pretty much guaranteed to do, no matter how well your opponent can roll those 5-up saves. Practicality of these guys is based on the rapid ingress that you're gonna do, so you will need to find a good spot for them, which, I mean, with knights it's not as hard as with other armies because they don't control the board as well, typically, depending on how many bodies they have. So you should be able to find a spot for your guys to rapid ingress and then charge into the fray with a good, reasonably good charge roll. Certainly beats rolling a 9-inch, which we all know how that is going to end. Next unit are the beloved Eradicators with Biologists, and this unit is 200 points for the squad of 6 and 70 points for the Biologists. And with these guys, I will say it outright, we will have to pull every trick from our sleeve to make that work, because, well, obviously a squad that is 270 points should struggle to kill something that is close to 400. You essentially need the full complement of every single buff you can imagine, plus the inbuilt stuff. So full rerolls to hit, wound, and damage that they have. The lethals from Biologists, +1 to wound from Oath. The guys being in melter range, so 9 inches away. And also spending a CP to throw a grenade, which means that you actually will be within 8 inches of the knight. And this way, in shooting without the grenade, they would do about 22.5 wounds on average to a knight, so 25.5 wounds on average with the grenade strat included. So just barely in the threshold. And the important thing here is that the 80% confidence is also hugely different compared to the mean, which is 14 wounds, the 80% mark is. So because of the low volume of dice and the harder dice result required for you to achieve your goal, which in this case you would need 4s to hit on the multi-meltas, you would need 4s to wound on all the attacks, you would then need to bypass the invulnerable save, which also cuts a lot of that low volume off. There is a lot that can go wrong and will go wrong in a lot of cases, and that's what brings down the 80% confidence result. The reliability of this one is very questionable, but the combo is also very cheap, well, relatively, compared to the target that it actually tries to kill, and against non-knights targets, so something that's toughness 10 and doesn't have an invulnerable save, they will be amazing, and I can assure you they will be. I've used them a lot competitively, so they are worth the investment. This also accounts for the deliverability of them, which you have thanks to the Repulsor, and Repulsor is a good transport. We're not counting him into the cost because he's obviously a different thing, and if we counted him, that would kind of ruin the whole video's purpose, but obviously the Repulsor also can shoot into the Knight, which will raise the floor and raise the average level as well. A beautiful and clean combo of Inner Circle Companions plus Azrael. I really love the Inner Circle Companion models. Probably I like them the most out of all the, like the elite melee 3-wound squads, because Sword Brethren are cool, but I personally just really like the aesthetics of these long kind of tabards that the Inner Circle Companions have, and also reading the old Horus Heresy book about the Taliban and how they train their Knights of the First Order makes it so much more interesting for me to look at these models. Azrael is 115 points and 6 Inner Circle Companions are 180, so a total of 295 points, which you'll most likely add the Impulsor to that delivery, but we will not count that. So you need Oath of Moment, of course, and you get lethal hits on the strike profile anyways, sustained from Azrael, and you would also have the +1 to wound from your detachment of choice, for example, Gladius. With all these buffs, you would end up doing an average of 28.7 wounds to a Knight, which is more than needed, and will mean that you are likely to kill a Knight with a 6+ Feel No Pain as well, which that would be at 24 wounds on average that you would deal. 80% confidence spread is not huge too, so 24 wounds. As you can see, again, we see that pattern of the high quality melee stuff not having a huge spread with the mean, and that's a good thing because it means that we are more likely to actually achieve that result in real games. If you have ever felt a situation where you think on average you're supposed to be doing this, and on a tabletop very often and usually will be in situations where you really cannot afford it, or you don't have other resources that you can allocate to solving this problem, that's usually when this will show up, like you not doing enough damage and then being very disappointed with your squad. In order to prevent that, you need to measure not only the average that your unit does, but also the 80% or however many percent confidence level you want to really know like how much damage you are guaranteed to get. You're killing the Knight on average in 71.6% of situations, and that's pretty good if you ask me. This is also a really practical combo because thanks to being Impulsor friendly, exactly 7 models in the Impulsor, and as I said in one of my previous videos, I just love when exactly 7 models fit into the Impulsor. That feels magical to my OCD. And you get a pretty serious concentration of force inside a relatively small package. Plus, Azrael helps the Inner Circle Companions survive by activating their -1 to hit that they have when led by a character and giving them 4+ in the vulnerable save. And with the Impulsor, you obviously get the extra 3 inches on the disembark. So yeah, it's a very fast and very reliable way to do a lot of damage to a target. Side note here, if you're fighting against a Chaos Knight with -1 damage, and that's the stratagem, 2 command point stratagem that you are very likely to encounter if you're playing against Chaos Knights, because that's one of if not the most, the best detachments that are available to them in the new codex, then you are pretty much screwed for almost like all the combinations. You will need multiples of units no matter what you do in almost all situations, but the Inner Circle Companions are a very solid way to get a lot of wounds onto the target, bypassing that -1 damage, because they have this sustained hits 2 profile with extra attacks and like similar everything apart from damage being 1. So with that one, on average you would do 17.1 wounds and 80% confidence of 14 wounds to the Chaos Knight with -1 damage. That is Azrael included still. We like this combination. It's very practical. It's relatively expensive, but it also is reasonably survivable, and you will also still have the Impulsor in the back somewhere doing actions for you. So yeah, it's clean, nice. Azrael will have a chance to give you a command point potentially. Obviously, whilst he's inside Impulsor, he doesn't use his abilities, but once he's out, you will get some of that efficiency too. Not as much as if he was just leading the squad by itself on foot, which, I mean, you can always do that as well, but I honestly think that the Impulsor is the better way to go. And last but definitely not least are the Sanguinary Guard plus Dante. So the squad costs 120 points for Dante, 240 points for the 6 Sanguinary Guard. They are the fastest of the combos that I mentioned thanks to their 12-inch move and their advance and charge capacity in Liberator Assault Group with +1 to wound that they have, can get, most likely to make it into combat before the knights are able to do anything to your unit. Have incredible damage potential with the +1 to wound from Red Rampage stratagem and Oath. You obviously can activate lethal hits as well, but the calculations below are without the lethal hits, which means that you don't have to battle shock your own guys. These buffs, you would do an average of 31.7 wounds to a knight, so even more than the Inner Circle companions, and that's without the free lethal hits, which free being the fact that you can just battle shock them and increase your damage output even more. 80% spread also falls exactly on the 26 wound mark, so you're essentially guaranteed to kill a knight with these modifiers, with these 7 models. And you don't need a transport for these guys unless you want to use a repulsor, which in this case they'll become even faster, even more reliable to actually deliver their damage. And weirdly enough, this unit has the highest chance of killing the Chaos Knight with -1 damage. And you know why? Because they have a very good chance of not allowing the Chaos Knight to turn on the -1 damage thanks to Dante's 6-inch aura of -1 battle shock test at -1, which he does at the start of the fight phase. So if the Chaos Knight player fails that test, they will not be able to use any stratagems, which means they will not be able to use -1 damage. And in that case, the Chaos Knight is definitely, as we can see, dead. So the Dante can scare the living crap out of even the Chaos Knight pilot. I think it's pretty ironic considering that Chaos Knights, their whole thing is scaring everyone around them, and them being scared so much that they cannot use their own stratagem is very, very it brings joy to my heart as an mostly Imperium player. Very practical combo. If you're playing the Blood Angels in Liberator Assault Group, I really like this as an option. If you need to kill something that is very hard to kill, is very far away, and potentially even protected by layers of screens and terrain, I don't think there are many things in the game that can do that better than a Sanguinary squad with Dante, because that's just, you need infantry that with fly for that, because then you can fly over screening stuff, you can move through terrain, and you need a very high capacity to actually do damage, and there are a few units that fall under these criteria. Here's just a small bonus one. It's not going to be legal for long. It's literally going to be illegal in like a week or so when the Black Templars Codex officially releases, but as it stands now, this is the absolute beast of a combo in terms of the absolute damage that it can do. It's one of the most damaging squads in the game, if not like the most damaging ones, the ones that can do just the highest amount of raw damage. It's definition of pure insanity, and it's unmatched. You would pay 120 points for Helbrecht using old prices, and 65 points for Lieutenant, plus 140 for 5 Sword Brethren, so that's 325, well under the cost of an Imperial Knight. And you don't even need to max out their buffs, to be honest, because with just lethals on 5s and Oath of Moment, plus the +1 to strength that you get from Helbrecht, they would do 37 wounds to a knight, 36.7. That's crazy. right? And especially considering that it's just a 5-man squad of Sword Brethren. You can have 10-man squad of Sword Brethren, so you can almost double that. 80% spread is 30 wounds, so you're almost definitely flipping a knight, no questions asked. And this squad is also actually capable of brute forcing through the -1 damage of a Chaos Knight with just spending 1 CP on Fervent Acclamation from the old Index detachment of the Black Templars to get sustained hits on 5s as well as the lethal hits on 5s thanks to Helbrecht, doing 29.5 wounds to the Chaos Knight with -1 damage. So if the Chaos Knight pilot thought that he was safe, well, 10 Angry Men plus Helbrecht will... Sorry, 5 Angry Men plus Helbrecht will think otherwise. Following the same logic, they can also down a Lancer with a 4+ invulnerable save and a 6+ feel no pain. In short, they can kill just about anything in the game, and that's not even the full squad. So if you have like a 10-man unit of Sword Brethren plus Helbrecht plus Lieutenant, yeah, it's I don't know if there's anything in the game that can survive that. Literally, I don't think there's anything, and that's probably why this combo is non-existent anymore. It's completely gone, wiped out, and yeah, 10-man Sword Brethren is gonna do a lot of damage still. It's just not gonna be nearly as much as it used to be able to do. And honestly, you never really needed that much damage in the first place. To be honest, I don't know of many situations where you really actually need that much. It's the rare case where more isn't better, necessarily. Please let me know what you think about my top 5 Night Killer units. I really enjoyed making this video because I think it's an interesting challenge, and I'm happy that a lot of Space Marine units are up for that challenge. If you have a good idea for another unit that can do something like that, so kill a knight on average, and potentially even better if it can kill it reliably, then let me know in the comment section below. I'm really interested in hearing your opinion, guys. Thank you for watching, and I will definitely see you next time.